Hello everyone, it's that time again. Blog Chapter 218's out and I'm here to review it, talk about it, and give my opinions on it, as I do most weeks. But before we begin, I'd like to ask you, of course, as always, to like the video if you enjoy this type of content, and also subscribe to my channel since I make blog content fairly often, and it's pretty high quality in my opinion, so you should check some more of it out. But with that out of the way, we can get into the video. This chapter begins from where Nico uses Metavision to stop Isagi, and the blurb of this chapter says, just like how Isagi easily got the loose ball with Metavision, Nico easily stops Isagi with a vision similar to Metavision. What's the secret behind Nico's newly found vision? And this kind of implies that Nico's vision isn't exactly Metavision as of now, but it's very close to it, and it also implies that there's, levels to Metavision. But to continue on, we start with Isagi thinking to himself, saying, to think he saw through my plan and stopped it, it can't be. Nico, you can also use Metavision. Nico then asks him what is Metavision, which makes sense since Metavision is kind of a name that was made up by Isagi. But Isagi just says it's a way to use your vision. You can capture everything that's happening around you with your peripheral vision, and then simultaneously process and analyze everyone's movements on the field. Nico then says that all he did was track the ball while keeping an eye on Isagi's movements. Since he saw him and the ball were in a dangerous spot, he dashed forward, even though it meant going against their game plan. And then Isagi comments that Nico used Metavision subconsciously. And Nico says that he's right, and this is the first time he saw the field this clearly. And this implies two things that are pretty interesting, which I'll get into now. The first one is less of an implication and just a blatant statement. It literally just says that he used Metavision subconsciously and not on purpose, which means that he doesn't have full control over it yet like Isagi and Kaiser do. And the second one is that, like everyone was theorizing, which is that Nico used Metavision there, it just means that it's blatantly not true since he says it's the first time he's ever felt this way. Which does lead to another tangent, which is that say he wasn't using Metavision all D20 game, or even most of it, he probably started using it during the later half, the second half of the game, since before that, Nico, with presumably just very high spatial awareness, was able to intercept his plays and stop a few of them. But that also does show how amazing his just base spatial awareness is, even at his age, since we know he's the youngest Blue Locker. And then Isagi says, using my movements and plays as hints, his brain and vision are gonna evolve to a whole nother level, which in my opinion I do think is a jab at what Isagi did to Kaiser when he gained Metavision by just staring at his plays, and Kaiser literally calls him a stalker for this. We then see Aiku come in and say it was a great tackle that Nico did, even though he went off script, and then he tells him to get back into formation. And Nico says with this game, he's gonna evolve even further. And this shows that Nico and Aiku have actually became very familiar with each other and pretty much like brothers or friends basically. And this can lead to Nico telling Aiku about Metavision later on, or even during this match, which if that happens, I would 100% put my money on the Ubers team to win this match. Since even though I do believe that they will win for now, I think it would be way more likely if they had 3 defenders with Metavision, since we know that Lorenzo most likely has it, and we also have Nico who can use it subconsciously, and we have Aiku who can also use it subconsciously, supposedly in flow state. So if they had all this on command, it would just be insane to see, and it would basically be impossible for the offense of the Germany team to get around. But to continue the chapter, we pick up with Raichi the useless picking up Isagi and telling him to not lose the ball so easily, and if he had kept the ball they had a good chance of scoring, to which Isagi says my bad and asks him if he knew what he was planning to do. Raichi says that Isagi saw an opportunity to get the loose ball and took it, right? Plus the ball pretty much bounced right to Isagi, so what else is there to it? And then Isagi asked Corona and Yukimiya if they saw it either, to which Corona said it looks like he just stole the ball as he always does, and Yukimiya said it's the same for him, but he doesn't see the game the same as Isagi does, so it's impossible for him to position himself as well as he does. This leads Isagi to the conclusion that Metavision isn't an ability that anyone can use, and that besides him, the only players on the field that can use Metavision are probably Kaiser, Nico, and maybe even Lorenzo. But that just shows how rare the ability is. And if he thinks along the lines of that, then that means Baro's Predator Vision, it was completely different from Metavision. He goes on to say that Metavision grasps the overall flow of the game and all the information that's circling within it. And since he can use it everywhere on the field, he has the ability to predict the future. But on the other hand, Baro's Predator Eye is focused on a 1v1 duel with the goalkeeper for the sole purpose of scoring goals. It's a specialized scoring-oriented vision type that only activates in front of the goal, and even though they're both strikers, depending on how they use their eyes and vision, the information that they pick up and analyze and act on are completely different. And Isagi, lost in thought, doesn't even realize that the game's about to start back up, and Raichi and Yukimiya yell at him to tell him that it's about to start, and Isagi's still thinking about how the two teams have two different philosophies and playstyles, and the Ubers play like one huge organism with their unity, discipline, and coordination, while the Germany team plays like a chaotic, fluid, multi-faced organism spearheaded by him and Kaiser. And everyone on the field understands this, and that's why right now everyone's thinking about the next move and how they can make an impact. And according to Isagi, both sides are feeling each other out at a super high level, and this is what a chess match that occurs within a world-class football game feels like. And then Isagi says that the next play and the next goal will definitely be the turning point of the game, and the players who manage to tilt the situation in his favor will undoubtedly dominate this game as its game changer, which is is of course a reference to the chapter's title. We then cut to Kaiser, who I honestly forgot existed since he was too busy getting locked up by Lorenzo. But anyways, Kaiser is talking about how annoying Lorenzo is and how he's in his way, and he comments that he's gotten stronger since the last time they faced each other, which does confirm the thing I was talking about in the last chapter review, which is that Lorenzo and Kaiser and Ness have all played together before, and last chapter is actually implied by Lorenzo saying that Ness has gotten stronger. But Kaiser goes on to say that because of Lorenzo, he can't move freely in the way he wants to, and right now it's obvious that Isagi's having a much easier time moving around. And then Ness comes out of nowhere, basically babbling about, and Kaiser just tells him to shut up, and he's the one who's trash. And then he tells him to don't let his stupid emotions get in the way of his tiny brain, and just move like they practice, and he's not asking for creativity. Just believe in Kaiser, because nothing for him is impossible. Ness agrees, and the game restarts with Benedict Grimm giving a throw-in to Ness, and when Ness gains the ball, Isagi says that the game now is going to really start, and that how everyone reacts to Kaiser and Ness's combo plays will determine who scores the next goal. But out of absolutely nowhere, the wild card Kunigami comes in and says don't forget about this dark horse, stealing the ball from Ness. And the chapter ends off with Kunigami rushing towards the goal. Now that we've gotten the overview out of the way, we can finally get into the actual review of the chapter and what I think about it and what I think will happen in the next chapter. Now to start off with probably the second most important thing, which is Nico and his Metavision. I think that if Nico gains Metavision as a full conscious thing, rather than him not activating it consciously, that he would definitely be one of the best defenders in Japan. And the reason I don't say in the U20 world in general is because we still have people like Lorenzo, and there's possibly even more better defenders on the PXG team, so there's still more to be seen. But like I said, this also opens a window for Aiku even to gain Metavision, which would be absolutely insane. Someone like Aiku is able to use Metavision on command. Even though before Metavision he was already seen as the best defender in Japan, it would just put him to an entirely different league. But now onto the most important thing, which is undoubtedly Kunigami. Kunigami hasn't been the spotlight of any game since the first game that the Germany team played, which was the Spain match, in which Kunigami showed his newfound abilities in the wild card. But now that he does have the ball once again and Nico's in front of him, it does raise the question of how Nico's going to stop him, because it's obvious that physically Nico is absolutely not holding this guy. He's like 15, he's completely getting trucked by Kunigami. If I had to guess, it would probably be some kind of double press with the person that Nico has on his right side. But to be honest, I don't even know if that would work, since we've seen that Kunigami has the capabilities of going through multiple defenders. But that's really all we have for Kunigami. But to go on to Ness, I think that what Kunigami did can lead to Ness and Kaiser stop becoming like teammates basically. Since we see that Kaiser before the game even starts was already pretty geared up, we see that he has the dark pigmentation around his eyes, showing that he's probably about to try a little harder. But then his right hand man, who he, mind you, doesn't really care about, just gets the ball stolen from him, completely stopping anything he had in mind. And since, like I mentioned, he doesn't really care about him, he probably will just end up leaving him in the dust, and this also could lead to a Ness awakening, meaning that it's not all a bad thing. Since as we know right now, Ness has absolutely zero ego. He literally only pays for Kaiser and to pass the ball to him. But it's also possible that Ness isn't really bred or born to be a striker player, but he could have an awakening as like a midfielder or, an assisting player, and maybe even switch sides and begin playing with Isagi, even though I do see that as way less likely. And if Isagi actually does take Ness from Kaiser, it would be pretty interesting, since Isagi does call him the Naked King, and taking his shield away from him would lead him one step closer to being naked, having nothing really. But to go back to the beginning text of this chapter that says that Nico only had a vision similar to Metavision, this could mean that there's levels to Metavision like I mentioned before, and it would also mean that basically having Metavision doesn't automatically put you on the world class level, but rather you have to have a very specific type of Metavision, and the one I think Isagi has is probably better than most other ones, just because in the novels it is stated that he had amazing spatial awareness as a kid, like even as a little child, and he's always been implied to have very high spatial awareness even in the selection matches. And since we know that everyone can't really use Metavision, it's also probably just based on the luck of the gene pool. And also, to comment on Kaiser, there's been a lot of people saying that Kaiser has gone into flow state, he's going to go into flow state in this match, and so whether he's going to go into flow state in this match, I don't know, but people were saying that he went into flow state because of the pigmentation that's around his eyes. And I would just like to comment on this and saying that that's just not true. That's just an indication of his ego, or him flaring up and getting to a higher level, just moving up to a higher level. Rather than flow state, which I would put on here, is way different. As we see with Botcher right here, he's in the flow state. But then we go to the next few chapters, we see Isagi, who blocks Botcher's shot after this, has that pigmentation around his eyes. This does not mean that Isagi's in the flow state, but he has put himself to a higher level in order to stop this ball from going into the goal. But I'd also like to comment on what Isagi says about Predator Vision and Metavision and comparing the two. He says specifically that even though him and Bar are both strikers, depending on how they use their eyes and vision, the information that they pick up, analyze, and act on are completely different. And then he says inputting is so much fun. This has opened up a whole new world to Isagi, showing that there's more way to absorb information rather than just absorbing everything like Metavision does, or absorbing like just a few things like Predator Vision does. And it could even imply that there are people in the Neo Egoist League that have different types of vision, different from both Metavision and Predator Vision, and Isagi might even get some of these. But that's really all I have for today. This chapter was kind of a filler chapter, you know, it was a lot of info dropping rather than just showing the game, but it is pretty interesting nonetheless. It dropped a lot of amazing knowledge that we needed, and it even left us on a great cliffhanger. So if you enjoy this type of videos, of course make sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel, and go check out some more of my videos, and also comment down below what you thought of the chapter and the video. But that's all I have for today. Goodbye.